For those of you, thank you, Vinny. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katharina Wiedlak. I'm assistant professor for Anglophone cultural studies at the University of Vienna, and I'm a longtime friend of NYI, I would say. I'm also one of the people who put together the Solidarity Lecture series, and today we have the 4th installment, if I'm not mistaken, of that series. And I'm very happy to introduce you all to Anna Miller. Anna Miller is a researcher of women's history and also a social activist and storyteller with a background in political science and cultural studies. She has been discovering and popularizing women's history for more than 10 years in 2 projects, one called Metropolitanka and one Shipyard is a Woman. She is the co-author of Tours of the Gdansk Shipyard in the Footsteps of Women and The Main City of Gdansk in the Footsteps of Jewish Women. And she also guides these tours. She is the co-author of a broadcast about the female workers of the Gdansk Shipyard and is working on a book about them. She has coordinated the DARE IT mentoring program aimed at women who want to find their first job in the IT industry. After hours, she explores the field of data science. She is interested in the ethical aspects of artificial intelligence and how it can be used to build more inclusive societies. Today, Anna will speak on the topic of how histories are changing the image of the legendary Gdansk shipyard. And I give over the mic to you, Anna. Welcome.
Hi, hello, thank you very much for the introduction and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to speak in front of you and hello from Gdansk. I'm going to share, as Katarina said, her stories from Gdansk, from the Gdansk shipyard. I'm going to share a presentation with you now. The quote you can see on the presentation is the quote from one of the participants of our project, and you can see those participants of the project, women who worked in the Gdansk shipyard, on the picture. And I'm going to tell, and what I'm going to say is based on their stories and also on some documents and research I've done with my colleagues. I will tell a little bit more about it in a minute. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please share them on the chat. For those of you who are from the Central Europe, probably some of those stories will sound familiar because we share this part of the history of women history after the Second World War. So one of those women said after sharing her story for the first time in their life that it has never been said before, our lives matter. She was like a woman in her 70s, and she was talking about her life and her work life, of course, in the family, but she felt for her, like most of her life, that it's not relevant and it's not important. When we started to contact women from the Gdansk shipyard, the first challenge was to convince them that what they have to say is important. Their first answer very often was, I didn't know Lech Wałęsa, I didn't took part in the strike in August 1980, so probably what I said is not important for you to hear. So now, step by step, I will share with you how we worked with them and what insights we got from that research. But first of all, I would like to share you a movie from the Gdansk shipyard, so you can imagine how that work of women looked like. This is the video from 2004. So after the original Gdansk shipyard collapsed, because it collapsed in 1996, but still part of it operated in 2004, and all El Southern and our artists came to the shipyard and recorded work of one of the gantry crane operators. So now you will also hear the sound of the shipyard. So it can be a little loud, so please don't be scared. So this is a very rare video documenting women's work in the shipyard, one of the biggest company in the northern of Poland. And because it was very difficult to find any information and people were not aware about women's work in the shipyard. In 2012, we decided to do this research project, but a research project combined with activism. And very often now when I will tell this story, very often I will use this we reference because it's not only my work, but also work of me and my colleagues. You can see part of our group on the picture on the right, where we were discussing, we had workshops on how to record oral histories. And on the left, you can see my colleague decorating a gate number 2, the main gate to the Gdansk Shipyard. And I chose this picture because it shows like what this project mean to us. It was not only about discovering women's histories, but it was also working with them, trying to understand their reality. And this picture is important because for many years there was a woman called Aleksandra Olszewska, a very regular woman who was responsible for taking care of the gate, which is historical gate. And the square next to it, the square around the monument of fallen shipyard workers. She was running a kiosk next to the gate, and she was responsible for putting flowers on the gates, so make sure that it's always decorated. After she died in 2011, in 2018, you can see now that no one is actually doing that. So when she was still there, so very often we came there, and to help her, we were calling people to collect flowers, also trying to help her and to do something with her and for her in the same time. And Dobrona Kauwa, a Polish historian, she published a paper a few years ago where she made a distinction between women's history and her story. And I really like this distinction because I think it fits to what we do. And she said that women's history is more academic approach, more academic discipline, where people do a research and try to understand the past. And her story, she said, it's not only about working with the past and discovering the past, but it's also about doing something with the community and to animate it, to involve them in telling their own story and trying to change how the history is also perceived by people, like regular people who are not interested in history. So those two things, research and working with community, is the core of our activities actually for the last 12 years. And I will also share that perspective with you as well. And I think it's also because we are not historian. Most of us have backgrounds in cultural studies, psychology, or linguistic. So this is why we formed a group with tasking group. Group consists of people from different places, from different disciplines, and build our own methodology. At first, we were thinking that we are building kind of an alternative version of the history, so something that is additional to this mainstream story about the Gdansk Shipyard, the place where Solidarity movement was born. But then we realized that that's not true. What we do is to try to change how the mainstream history is being said. So asking questions not only about women's role, but also about men's role, and about also how gender influenced what people could have done in the shipyard and during the Solidarity strike. So that's how our methodology, let's say, has been changing during our work. And this is the map of Poland. For those of you who don't know Poland, I know we are from all around the world. So I'm going to tell the story about Gdansk Shipyard, which is in the north of Poland. And as you can see, it's like this is the whole voivodeship around Gdańsk that's actually the shipyard influenced the most. So it's the story about the city and the region and how it influenced the history of Poland. This is the shipyard. You saw how the buildings looks inside from the movie. This is the picture of the shipyard with the very famous green cranes, which is also interesting. Women could have not worked on those cranes because of some law issues, because it was believed that it's dangerous for women to work so high. So those cranes, who are a symbol of Gdańsk, are the typically male workspace. And this is how the shipyard looked a few years ago. Now a few more buildings are destroyed, but the cranes are still there. And on the right, you see a picture from 1980 from the famous Solidarity strike. And the gate number 2, the main gate to the shipyard, the place where people who are in the shipyard and the strike, and those who were outside supporting striking people came to meet and support them. Also a short introduction about this space. And as I said, this is the place is important because it was a big workplace, the biggest in the region. People from the region and the whole country came to Gdańsk to work in the shipyard. So also shipyard built a lot of block of flats in the city, was responsible for migration in our region. And we realized that everyone knows someone who worked in the shipyard or have someone who worked in the shipyard in her or his family. So it's really important to understand the importance of this workplace to the city, how it has been developed because of this place, but also it's the place where the Solidarity movement was born, and it changed the Polish history and also the history in Europe. We can say that. This movement is mostly known because of Lech Wałęsa. This is the first image probably most of you have in your head if you know something a bit about Solidarity. A guy with a mustache, a shipyard worker as well. He was the leader of the strike, but there was another leader of the strike, Anna Walentynovich. You can see her on the right. This is the cover of Time magazine from a few years ago, because she was called the Woman of the Year of 1980 year because of her involvement in the strike, and she was put on the cover of the magazine. But she, for many years, she was forgotten. Now I would say that there are a few more books about her, so people are more and more aware about her role, but still it's a problem. It's really difficult to have those two people, male and female leader, put together and talk about this strike, not only as a strike where there was one leading person, but also more people with women among them also who were responsible for the success of this event. Both of them were shipyard workers. Anna started to work in 1950, Lech Wałęsa in 70s, so two different generations, two different stories behind them, and it also influenced how they were perceived. For example, Lech Wałęsa, he had a wife, he had few children at that time, and Anna Walentynovich was a widow with an adult son. So people said that, okay, we can follow Lech Wałęsa because his life situation is relevant to our life situation. He risked the same as we do. So and Anna, as a widow, is not such it's not kind of a role model for us. So this was one of the reasons why people remember and follow more what he said than what she said. Having all of that in our mind, that people think about the shipyard as a male workspace, Solidarity movement as a movement led by a man, we started to dig the history and try to find those few women. As you can see on that picture, there are a few women on that picture in the history of the Gdansk shipyard. Try to understand their situation, their life possibilities, why their role also in strikes in the shipyard, and the whole context when it comes to their involvement in public life. We were not the first people who did that. There was Eva Majewska in 2004, who was the first one, I would say, who talked with women working in the shipyard. That time, the shipyard was still operated, as I said. So she had this possibility to meet those women in the place where they were working. She didn't record their interviews because she said she wanted them to be spontaneous. But we have some pictures and some notes from those interviews. And there was also Iwona Zając, an artist who recorded male stories from the Gdansk Shipyard, also at the beginning of 2000s. And we talked with her a few years later, and she said that she didn't realize that she recorded only men, that it was so obvious for her that shipyard workers are male workers that she wasn't even thinking about looking for a woman. And based on those interviews, she painted murals. You can see one of them on the right with her body as a body of a shipyard Nike. This wall was destroyed a few years later. She decided to paint it black and not to move it somewhere else. She said that it makes sense only to have it around the shipyard, not in the museum. So what she did later was to embroidered those words on the fabric, as you can see on the right, and she called this work Patience, or the miracle of hard work, also connecting that work that women did preparing those artworks to a work of the hard work of shipyard male workers. So those are two projects of artists that happened before, collecting some stories. And I really like this question, let's say, does do grandmas don't tell stories? This is the question from the article from 60s, from a guy who was let's say investigating the story of families who migrated to the region in 60s. And he realized that only men wrote some kind of journals and shared them with in a competition that was in 60s. And any woman sent any of her memories to that competition. So he was thinking that maybe the only way to get any memories from women is to go to their homes and record their stories. And he was really disappointed because of the bad weather. He couldn't go to that place. And he said that maybe it was the only possibility to meet those women because it was kind of a local holiday. And now they will be silent forever. And we tried to convince those grandmas, let's say, to share their stories with us. As I said, it wasn't easy at the beginning. They had a lot of doubts if they have anything interesting to share. But we started with our grandmas, with our neighbors, with our aunts. Here you can see my friend and grandmother of her husband. So those people were our first narrators, and then they opened the gates to other people. They called their colleagues, friends, family, and try to convince them to also share their stories with us. Now our collection has more than 60 interviews with women who worked in different positions. But even the space of the shipyard wasn't very wasn't like open to women perspective. So that was the other challenge we faced. Because here we can see the map of the shipyard and the names of the street, and they have only the masculine form. The names are connected with the jobs of people working in the shipyard. So it was not only that women didn't want to say anything and share their memories, but in the same time, when we started to look for any traces of women in the space, it was difficult to find them. But I can say that we succeeded. Here we can see pictures of women doing different jobs in the shipyard. They are pictures from the National Archive of Gdansk. Unfortunately, we don't have pictures of like every job women did in the shipyards. It was the military zone, so it was impossible for people to take their own camera to this place and take their own pictures. So only people who are like official photographers, journalists, can enter the shipyard with the camera. So we have some kind of official pictures of women working in laboratories, construction offices, as a dentist, working with like computer, very basic one in 60s and 70s, as seamstress and also as office workers. We discovered I counted that it was that's almost 20,000 women working in the shipyard from 1945 to 1996, with 150,000 people working there in general. So it's less than 20%, but still a lot of stories to be shared. When we were talking with women, we also discovered that there are some declarations, of course, about how great it was for women to work in the shipyard, about how great environment for work they had in the shipyard. But unfortunately, of course, they were like most of them were slogans. Here you can see a picture of leading worker Anna Lubczyk. Then she changed her name after she married Kazimierz to Anna Walentynowicz. So it's her picture from 1950s when she was a leading worker, when she was on the cover of the newspapers, and she was like the face of the shipyards, the new generation of women entering male-dominated industry. Because in the beginning of 50s, a lot of women were called to work in the shipyard because there was lack of hands, lack of people. So everyone was welcomed, and they prepared, of course, the shipyard prepared some special posters. They were all around the city. So this way women found out that shipyard is a way for them to build a career. It was a good proposition. They earned quite a lot of money, but as you can imagine, this place was not ready for women. They were fighting the whole time. They were fighting for suitable workwear. As you can see on the left, there is isolators with two big uniforms. It was dangerous for them to wear them, so they were using a lot different ways to make them be more fitting to their body. Here you can also see them having an asbestos, so the material they were working with was extremely dangerous, but it's another story. So two big shoes, two big uniforms, that's the story you can still can hear or listen or read somewhere, because even during COVID, there was the whole thing about two big uniforms for doctors. And also, so one thing is that the infrastructure was not ready for women, no toilets, no place for changing clothes prepared to women. So they spent a lot of time to fight for that. And on the other hand, a lot of beliefs that didn't help them to grow and develop their career in the shipyards. People believe that, like many people had problems to understand that women can be a physical worker, that women can be an engineer. Of course, the best fitting roles for some people was for women to prepare foods. As you can see on the right, there's Anna Walentynowicz during the strike preparing sandwiches, and some people telling about the strike, they always tell that, okay, but the only role women had during the strike was prepare sandwiches. So this kind of beliefs and understanding the role of women was quite popular among shipyard workers. So women very often mention that they had to work twice as hard to prove that they are valuable workers, especially for those in high position, like with technical degree after technical universities. That was their reality. What was also difficult for women was that shipyard was called a mother, because it was not only a workplace but also a place that provided childcare, healthcare, foods, as you can see on those pictures from the shipyard everyday life. So shipyard was a mother. ships were called children. Very often men, when they were telling a story about building a ship, they compare it to raising a kid. So there was, of course, a father, and the father was an engineer, a male engineer. So for women, as a people, as a worker, it was really difficult to find their own place in this imaginarium, because they were treated more as very often also as symbols, as leading workers were shown as a symbol of new woman, godmothers of the ships, those who were responsible for naming the ship. Of course, they were compared to Polish mother, to the whole to this person who's responsible for taking care of the crew, etc., etc. And women also, when they were entering the public space, as those who took part in the strike in August 1980s, they were also, when people were talking about their role, they were very often used, they were using some traditional images, like in case of Anna Walentynovich, it was Mother Courage from Bertolt Brecht drama. So it was still the whole time, it was really difficult to find a way to talk about women as a person who has a body, who has needs, who has challenges. It was more about looking for some generalization. And one of the person who also faced that's also connected with the shipyard was Krystyna Hojnowska-Liskiewicz. She was an engineer in the shipyard and the first woman who sailed solo around the globe in the 70s. And when she was preparing for this thing, she also said that for a woman who is connected with the sea, who is trying to do something for the first time, so it was really difficult. People didn't believe that she's able to do that, to sail solo around the globe, even if she was a sailor, she was a captain, she was an engineer. So she also had to face this kind of beliefs that didn't support her career. So when the strike happened in 1980s, women had to find their own way to do that. Some of them were involved in this oppositional movement in Poland before the strike and in the second half of 1970s. So they were prepared to be leaders, to lead the strike. But as you can see on those pictures, on the pictures in the mainstream, very often you can see them in supporting roles, as on the picture where on the upper part of the slide, where you can see Lech Wałęsa talking to striking people, and Ewa Ossowska, who was one of the leaders of the strike, staying behind him in a white sweater. Andrzej Wajda, when he made a movie about Lech Wałęsa, it was like 10 years ago, I guess. He changed. He also used this picture, but when he was doing the scene, he changed Ewa Ossowska to some guy. So, and when some activists asked him about that, so he said, "Please read the books, because this is like it wasn't a woman behind Lech Wałęsa. There was a man." So women in supporting roles, as I mentioned, very often people talk about them as responsible only for preparing food. That's also part of the story, but you can also change a perspective, and this is what women did. One of the women who was preparing food during the strike, she said that for her it was really important and gave her like the sense of power, because she, for example, rejected to give food to the representative of the government, because it was the strike where the government and the representative of workers negotiated. So even if it was about providing food, and some people said, okay, it's only that. So for them, it was really important. And it was also important for keeping people for supporting them during the strike. They had to eat. And the third picture you can see is the picture with Mary, the mother of Jesus. The Catholic imaginarium was also influenced the image of Polish women, and still do. And during the strike, they even put this sign that Mary is striking with them. And the expectation was that women are in supporting roles. They could be in the shipyard, but they had to leave at 10 p.m. and they could come back at 6 a.m. It was said that it's for their safety, but also it was said that someone had to take care of the family. So for those leaders, it was possible to stay in the shipyard during the night, but for those who were just regular workers, they had to leave and come back in the morning. Of course, they did. With the bags full of cigarettes and bread, etc. But it was much more difficult for them to be involved when they had to move every day. The whole, like everything that's so those images, those beliefs influence the role of women during the strike very, very much. And there is a quote from Barbara Sass from 1989 I really like, and that's I think explains quite well why it was so difficult for women to build a career as a political activist, a social activist, or even as a career in the workplace. Because in Poland, after the Second World War, I would say that there was like the crisis, economical crisis all the time, and women were those who bore the cost of that crisis, which means that they spent most of the time trying to provide food to their families. They spent a lot of time waiting in queues. They were like managers of the household. So if they had like 5 children, a husband and a mother-in-law in one flat, that was quite popular. So they had to manage all of that. So they didn't have time to think about anything else even. So when the strike happened in 1980s, it was really difficult for them to find a right way to find themselves in the situation. And also, even in the shipyards, this is what very often women repeated in our interviews, that, for example, the gatherings of shipyard organization were after working hours, so it was really difficult for them to stay because they had to take children from schools, from nurseries, etc. So they didn't have time to be involved in that discussion about what can happen in the shipyard. And it also didn't help them with the career because it was expected from them to be involved in political organization or parties to be so they can be promoted later. The other aspect of women's involvement in political movement and the strike in 1980s is that some people said that women were those who were waiting outside the gates and asking men to come back home, which is not true. And here you can see the quote from John Reid, which is a quote from Glasgow, but it fits really well to the situation that's happened in Gdansk, that women were very much aware about the difficulty of everyday life, the difficulty of the economical crisis as well. So they knew that it's really important to have that this strike is successful. And on the right, you have a quote from the book of Wintergrass, and it's not about August 1980, it's about December 1970, another strike in the shipyard, much more dramatic, where women also were those who support men and added animals, as he said, to stay in the shipyard and to continue strike. Not because of they have this political view how the country should be changed, but because of the everyday life difficulties and economy that was really bad. So one thing is that there is like this popular belief that women were those who tried to stop the strike, but in the reality, women were those who make it actually happen in the first place, because the unlawful dismissal of Anna Walentynovich was the reason of the strike in August 1980. And then they stopped workers who started to leave the shipyard on the 3rd day of the strike, and they kept them in the shipyard. So this way the strike could be continued. But yeah, there is a lot of beliefs that people still have in their minds thinking about those events. And about the leaders, as I told you about the supporting roles, but of course they were leaders as Anna Valentynovich. Maybe now she's not the person who most of the people know, but they of course were leaders. There were female leaders of the strike, and here is another one of them, Alina Pienkowska. She was a nurse in the shipyard clinic, and for many years she was writing articles about the working environment in the shipyard, which was quite dangerous then. They tried to fire her from work. So it was she was arrested a lot of time, and as a single mother, it was quite difficult to manage that way of life. Luckily, she had parents who took care of her son then when she was under arrest, for example. And Alina was a woman who passed the information about the strike on to Jacek Kuroń, and then he shared it with the world. And then she stopped workers who started to leave the shipyard on the third day of the strike. And she was also one of the leaders negotiating with the government. As here you can see her quote from her from September 1980, so 2 weeks after the strike, it was a successful strike. She was asked by the journalist if she think about being involved in the independent trade unions. The whole interview is very strange because it looks like the male journalist, had a big problem to understand how such a young, small, like petite woman could have played such an important role, and you can hear her being more and more frustrated during the interview. But what she said here is that she never thought about like being involved in this political movement. And but at the same time, she's aware that she's one of the only few people who know how to do that, who know how to form free trade unions. So for now, she felt that she had to do that. And this is like very popular among women who were involved in the strike and then in solidarity movements, that they were not thinking about their future in politics. What they did was this moral obligation to do something, very often because they were thinking about their children's future. So this way, when the fight started, the fight for power, for position started, they were not prepared to do that, or they very consciously decided not to be part of that. And because of that, we had like mostly male leaders in solidarity. Women were like working on, decided to leave, or they were working on very specific problems. As Alina Pienkowska, she was responsible for the healthcare, and she was one of very famous and charismatic leader of the healthcare. But at the same time, she never became someone who had whose voice was heard. Her story is also a story of a woman who was a leader first, and then he became a wife of another leader, and people started to look at her through the lens of this marriage. And in the 90s, she even loudly said that it's not fair because she had her own successes, and because of being married to a leader, Bogdan Borusewicz, people don't remember about that. So unfortunately, she died in 2002, so she can't say anything else about that. But I feel that she could be the one who actually could be the voice of women from solidarity movement, women from the shipyards. Unfortunately, is not with us anymore. She was one of the people who used her position the most as a woman to change the perception of women from the solidarity movement. Luckily, even if there are some challenges, and still a lot has to be changed when we talk about women's role in Polish history, and also women's professional development, etc., etc. So there are few there is a need, and also there are people who are trying to change the way the story is being told. One of them is Barbara Piórkowska. She's our local writer. She lives in Gdansk, and she wrote a book called Utkanki, and one of the chapters is about the shipyard, where she also compared the shipyard to a mother, but she said that she also looks for this very creative force that she as a mother had, because she not only raised thousands of men and women, but also she built hundreds of ships, yachts, and vessels. And she is telling the story of the collapse of the shipyard as the story of death of the city center, because the shipyard was in the city center, and now it's becoming a new place, new fancy place, where you can spend the whole evening, the whole night, where you can buy a very expensive flat. So she also this story is also about that the creative force of women is moved to the outskirts of the city where people are living now, and here in the center we have only like kind of a desert, but fortunately even if she's dead, if the shipyard is dead as a mother, we still have some voices and some memories that we can tell. So she's one of the person who is taking care of those female voices to be heard. The other thing is, of course, what we did. We collected those stories. We prepared the book. We prepared broadcast. We also guide tour in the shipyard. We involved a few shipyard workers, female shipyard workers, to be guides in the shipyard. So they brought their own memories back to this place. But for most of them, it was really painful to come back because the area, the space has changed a lot. Most of the building is unfortunately destroyed, but few of them decided to come back to tell the stories. Here's Ula Sztubel. She was an isolator, and she's 78, and very often she's invited to events talking about her experience from work, and also how she combines and the private life and work life together. Because what is important is that there wasn't a line like this line between private life and shipyard life. It was very blurred. They spent quite a lot of time working, also over hours. Their families took part in a lot of events in the shipyard. They were under they were using the shipyard healthcare. So the shipyard was like, in a sense, kind of a mother taking care of the whole family life. What is also great is that few artists used those stories and recorded their own stories of women working in the shipyard, and they produced movies or theater plays. Here you can see some few images from Kamila Homicz movie. One was about Ula Sztubel, so the isolator. The other one was about Helena Dmochowska, the gantry crane operator. You saw the gantry crane in the beginning. So those movies you can also see online. And of course, those guided tours we have every summer, so people can enter the shipyard with us and listen to those stories. And as I said, even the space of the shipyard is male dominated. But there is this nice thing in Gdańsk that we have trams that are named after important people in Gdansk. We have few trams now with the names of women who are connected with the shipyard, and one of them is Aleksandra Olszewska, the woman who took care of the gate number 2. I started my story with. So I think it's really important that not only those people who are in charge, who are responsible for leading the strike, but also those who actually cleaned the square, were responsible for putting flowers, are now visible in the public space. Maybe not in the names of the street in the shipyard, but on the trams. Here you can also see a picture of Ewa Osowska, this person in this white sweater I told before. that was staying behind Lech Wałęsa's back. Here you can see her speaking. So we managed to find this picture in the archive in US and use that on the cover of our map. And it shows that another story is possible. Maybe it's not easy to find it because to find this picture was quite difficult, and it was difficult to get the permission to use it. But you can find those other pictures and change how people see and think about women's involvement. And also here you can see the picture of Ula Stubel, who got the key to the city in 2018. It was 100th anniversary of women's right to vote in Poland, and women from 3 generations were invited to take the power in the city for one day. On the left is the mayor of Gdansk, Paweł Adamowicz, and he gave the key to the city to those 3 women. So one of them was the shipyard worker. So it shows that the whole story about the shipyard has been changing quite a bit, at least a bit. And the last picture is from the mural with Solidarity Movement women. That you can see in Gdańsk next to one of the train station. Also the thing that was prepared a few years ago, painted by independent artists. And few women from the shipyard workers were also placed there. So not only leaders, but also regular participants of the strike. And last but not least, I want to show you a picture of another gantry crane operator, Emilia Mirek. Emilia works as a gantry crane operator now in one of the terminals in Gdansk. A few years ago, I went to a meeting of people working in the maritime industry, and I realized that the situation didn't change so much since 1970s and 80s. I mean that I saw most of the people who were on that event were men. They were talking about very important issues for the maritime industry. There were no female experts speaking. And based on that, and based on my knowledge from this project, I decided to create with my colleagues a project for women working in maritime industry now. And for a few years, we had a mentoring program for women in maritime industry. We had leadership workshops. We also took pictures of them and put them in the public space. So it was also, I see it as a continuation of our work on the history. And here is Emilia. It's not our video. Last year, she became a face of the campaign in Gdańsk called Gdańsk, the City of Equality. I will show you the movie. It's in Polish, so so unfortunately we don't have an English subtitles, but it's about her passion to do this work. So today we also have women working in maritime industry, maybe not in the shipyard, but they face very similar challenges, but much more confidence, and knowing the history, and knowing also they're like having much more tools. They can fight for their position at work much more easier and with bigger success. So now I'm going to show you this movie, a very short one, to show you how the work of crane operators looks like now, 20 years after the first movie. So it's in sound as well.
Emila, ty musisz się tam dostać. Koniecznie, bo te suwnice to będą cię kręcić. Jest na przykład na jednej zmianie, nie wiem, 15 chłopaków i ja sama. Gdzieś tam moja samoocena wzrasta w jakiś tam sposób, bo to jest fajne.
Gdańsk miastem równości.
So women working in maritime industry are faces of the city now, which is great. I wouldn't say it's only our success. It was a lot of people trying to remind about their role in the shipyard, in the strike. So we know a little bit more about mechanism of the history, challenges they had to face, and better understand why we still have some problems when it comes to public, to women participation in public life, because there we have more and more challenges, I would even say. If you want to find out more about the project, our materials, so you can enter those, we can go to those websites. We have some of our materials are in English. Some are also in Ukrainian and Russian. So if that's the language of some of you, so you can go there. Yeah, so this is where I want to stop. What I wanted to say and share with you is are the experiences of women and how sometimes difficult it is to discover them, because sometimes they don't want to share, they don't believe in their stories. But when they started to do that, as you saw on the first slide, it's very important and very empowering experience. And this is the picture from the Women's Day we organized in 2016 and invited all of them to take part. I would say 30% of them came. And the most touching moment was when they sit around the table and started to share their memories with each other, negotiating it. It was touching because male workers have done it for many, many years now. Every year they have a meeting of male engineers. There are no women on the list of participants. So I would say that it was the first time when they started to do it, started to look for their own voice and their own her story. And I know that some of them are still in touch and try to talk about their experience with their colleagues to better understand what it meant. And I'm really grateful that some of them shared that with us. So thank you very much. I'm stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and for this amazing project. I'm really, yeah, it's really great what you did there and what you presented. Are there any questions in the audience right away, or any comments?
Yeah, maybe you have similar stories to share, because I'm sure that there is this kind of story in every place in the world that are still should be discovered, should be researched. I'm really curious about that. If maybe you have an experience.
Holly, please.
I'm not going to break with tradition. I'm always like, have the questions immediately. Thank you so much, Anna, for this amazing talk and for the work that you do. And it's absolutely inspiring and just shifts the narrative, and it's just amazing work. I'm wondering what within the whole country of Poland, do people realize how significant this is for the whole country, or do people consider it to be local, some sort of local herstory?
Yeah, I think
that's
okay. I would answering that, I'd say that there is a lot of herstory projects all around Poland. Ours, I think, was the second one. The first one was in Krakow, and it was about the Polish suffragettes. So women from all around the country, inspired by those first projects, started to do their own projects. And now there is a whole network of herstory initiatives. And we have like meetings every month to talk about how we work, what we do, how we can support each other. So even if our project is mostly known here, like it's maybe not known because it's known in the whole country, but this herstory is important for us here, I would say, for people living in the region. But for example, when I have walks at the shipyard, so almost every time there is someone from, like, let's say the south of Poland or middle Poland, when they had this kind of factories as well, and they said, okay, this is like what I can relate to, because this is the story of my grandmother. So I think on that level we are somehow connected. Now we are in this phase of the project where we are aware that we need to work on our archive to make sure that it's properly organized and easily accessed, because now it's not the case. So this is what we want to do this year, and also invite other initiatives, herstory initiatives, to have a discussion about that, because we are also part of the herstory now with our work. And it's important to protect it, because it's really easy to lose it, for example, when someone don't pay for a domain or something like that. So so yeah, this is how I would say. Of course, the Anna Valentinowicz story become much more and more like well known in the whole country. She died in 2010 in the plane crash. So also because of that, she became well known again. It was the plane crash where the president of Poland died. So the whole story, it's twisted story, but she was there as well. And for example, shipyard workers, those few women who took part in our project, they also took part in the film, in the movie, and it was distributed also in the national television. So this way, I would say that those stories are known outside of our context as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. While we wait for other people to raise their questions, I just wanted to emphasize that I liked so much about your presentation that you also emphasized how important the work was that a lot of women did that is not seen as political work, like this whole aspect of facilitating, of providing food, of getting back home to the families, but also going shopping and just like buying the supplies. Without that, the whole protest, of course, wouldn't have been sustainable. And I can very much relate to this emphasis with my projects that I have in the US. When I look at often Black Marxist groups, for example, in Harlem, the women that participated in those groups, they are never really recorded. Their contributions are not really part of the official history, but they were so important because they kept the groups going. And it's really hard to access or to find their contributions, right? And I was wondering, like, how you went about it. You said a little bit about it, that you also started with people that you know, grandmothers or other relatives, but maybe you can say a little bit more about it. How did you find those women, and how did you convince them to take part and share their stories? And yeah.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think it's really important. Also, they were that was male workers from the shipyard who said us, you have to talk with our wives. So that was really nice that they appreciated their work. They said that without their work at home, it wouldn't be possible for us to work over hours at the shipyard, working on new technologies, introduce them, etc., etc. So they were, for example, helping us to access their wives. What we did, we had one project that was quite well financed, so we had a lot of money to do a promotion. So we make sure that there were articles in those newspapers that people, like old people, also read. But we also cooperated with local libraries here in Gdańsk. There is like the main library, and they have like some small libraries all around the city. And we know where people from the shipyard live now. So we contacted those libraries from those local libraries, and we asked them to put posters on in their buildings. But also we organized some workshops for senior citizens in those libraries on digitalization, how to use tablets, etc., etc. And this way also new people came. We were cooperating with some senior organizations in the city. So we were like doing a lot of things trying to get those people. And even now, sometimes someone, we don't, this project is not like we're not recording right now, but some people still know about us. So sometimes someone is calling me or send like a message that, okay, I found out that there is someone in my family or in my neighborhood, you should contact this person. What was the greatest story, I think, is that we got few emails from daughters, and those emails were like, okay, my mother worked in the shipyard for 34 years. She's telling the story of the shipyard at home all the time. Please do something about that. And I really love that because they, like, those women were really ready to share their stories. Sometimes some of them had to be encouraged, but yeah, this is like, I think this is my favorite story. So when, like, so those daughters, they saw that in social media and thought that maybe it's good for my mother to be involved in this project. So I think this is how we got there. Sometimes it was difficult, and I know that there are a few women who are really important, who played an important role in the shipyards, but they didn't agree to share their stories, having different reasons. And I know it's very unique perspective, and it would die with them, but I have to agree with that because I don't know how to convince them, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to force them to share something that maybe it's difficult. When it comes to the family, we also record children, so children of shipyard workers and their perspective. What did it mean to be a shipyard worker's daughter, with its good and bad memories. I am also a shipyard worker daughter, but my father worked in the rebuilding shipyard, so not the Gdansk one, but also I had this experience of shipyard being really close to my history of my family. So I think this is also maybe a reason why I'm digging into it, try to understand my family history.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting. So do you have any other questions, audience? Yeah, John is writing that he hopes that you could share the link to the materials with the school. That would be amazing.
Okay, so I will share links with you. Unfortunately, our recordings are only in Polish, but yeah, as I said, we had one broadcast. Is the translation, the transcription is translated into English. It's about women's career. So I hope you can listen to it, listening to women's voices, because of course we are guides in the shipyard sharing the stories, but this is like unique thing to listen to their emotions. Sometimes very difficult, and reading maybe the transcript, so you can understand it better. And one more thing about the political involvements. Of course, we asked the women about the strikes in the shipyard. As I said, there were two main strikes in 1970 and 1980. And when we asked the question about the strike, so I had in my mind the strike in 1980, and they always had this in their mind a strike in 1970, which also showed us that their own schedule, like calendar of the events, is completely different than we have in our minds. And there were only one woman who were very involved in the strike in 1970, who were fighting on the street. And this is the only interview which is like 90% of the interview is focused on her on her involvement in that fight and all the other political events. So I think it's also very unique, even if it's very chaotic because it's a lot of emotion there. But it shows that there were women who wanted to be part of it, but there were no way for them actually to find this way, having like have families, and also even I think she didn't feel invited to join an organization, so as a physical worker. So yeah, that's maybe the last thing I wanted to share with you.
And why do you think they put more emphasis on the 1970s and not the 80s?
Because in 1980s it was an occupational strike in the shipyards. It was successful, no one died. And in 1970s, it was very violent. It was the reason of the strike was the rise of prices just before Christmas. So people couldn't afford to buy proper food for Christmas. And there were fights in a few cities in Poland, Gdańsk, Gdynia, and Szczecin. And in Gdańsk, 9 people were killed by the police and army. So it was really traumatic. And experiences of women from that strike are also really touching, because some of them, like most of them, have children, small children then. So the only thought was to go back home. And one of them said that after it was so stressful that she couldn't feed her baby after the strike because she lost her milk because of the stress. And also, so this is like completely new perspective, I would say. This is like how the body reacted to the strike. One said that she stayed in the shipyard, so she had a small baby, so her whole clothes were wet because of the milk, because she couldn't feed her baby. And other thing about this whole like calendar they had in their minds was that always when they were talking about the strike, so they were saying, okay, so my baby, like let's say my son was 6 months old, for example. So they put this event very much in their family history.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why this December 1970 is much more remembered, because it was a very tragic event. And after that, they were not allowed to put any monuments or to even talk about those events. It was for many years, it was forbidden to even mention those people who died in the strike. So one of the demands in 1980 was to build a monument, and it was built in 1980. So after 10 years, they finally succeeded.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So that's very, like, I think I realized that working in the shipyard was really difficult, because you were like working there, that's one thing, but from time to time very like violent or important like political events happen, and you were there. So then you had to think, okay, so what do I do now? Do I leave? Do I go home? Do I try to survive? Or do I stay? Do I fight for like, I don't know, for rise in my salary, or for some political demands? So it wasn't like an unusual regular workplace. It was there was also a lot of small strikes in this place. So for women and men working there, it was sometimes very challenging. And also they blamed all of those political events for the collapse of the shipyard, because that was the political decision to close the shipyard, and they said it was because we were fighting a lot in the past for our rights, so they decided to close it. And they felt that most of them feel that it was it was a failure, that the whole thing, like the solidarity movement, the solidarity strike, maybe at the beginning they felt that it was a successful thing, but after many years they feel, okay, we were left alone, the leaders left us, and so now we have a really low money, our retirement money are really low. They have a lot of money, they got a lot of money as politicians, so they felt like they gave a lot and they didn't got nothing. Mm-hmm. So that's also why it's sometimes very difficult for them to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I could talk for hours.
I could listen for hours. Yeah, thank you very much. Polly, did you want to say something?
No, I have now one question leads to another now, and I'm so intrigued about, first of all, who were the strike breakers when there were strikes? Was it just the police, or was it the army? How did the clashes? The clashes were not among the workers themselves, but with the, I don't know, authorities, or what was the
Okay, so in 1970s, it was December, so there was like the fight in the city. The striking shipyard workers, mostly they are people from the shipyard, started to they went to the building of the local government, and they had their demands. So those people tried to escape. There was a fire, so it was like a war on the street, actually. So then they called the local government called the tanks, army, and police to the city. So that when the next day they also wanted to go out and protest again outside the shipyard, so they were like the army and police waiting for them, and they shoot them. They started to shoot them, and 9 people died. They were buried in the night, so no one see that. The families were informed like many days after that, so like it was really traumatic and tragic event just before Christmas. So people were said not to go back to work for 2 weeks, so they were waiting for the decision if they can come back or not. Some were fired from the shipyard because being involved in the strike, as the rest came back in January, so 2 or 3 weeks later. So that's like in a nutshell, because it was a few days of fights on the streets in Gdansk, Gdynia, and Szczecin, where we had biggest shipyards in Poland. And in 1980s, it was different, because based on that experience, they knew that they had to stay in the shipyard. So they spent, those leaders of the strike, they were preparing for the strike for many months, because they knew it's going to happen. So they had like kind of a handouts or a guide how to do a strike, and one of them was to stay in the shipyard. They were not sure what's going to happen until the last day, so there were like people who were were guarding the walls and gates the whole time, looking if there's maybe army or police or I don't know, someone else trying to enter the factory. It didn't happen. And some people said it is because the people from the government were on holidays, so it was the holiday season, so it was much more difficult to make this kind of decision. So it was non-violent strike, but psychologically really, really difficult. From their memories from that time, you can see that a lot of people had a psychological like breakdown, so they had to leave the shipyards. So even if it was peaceful, it was difficult to do that. And the negotiation was between the government representatives. At first it was the strike between, it was a shipyard strike, so the negotiation was between the administration of the shipyard and the shipyard workers. After 3 days, after many other factories joined the strike, it became solidarity strike, and the negotiation was between the government, the representatives of the shipyard workers. So from the very small strike to support Anna Walentynovich after she was fired, it became something much more bigger. And they formed those 21 demands. The first one was to form independence, free independence trade union, solidarity union. So it became a political thing, but they were ready. They were reading. They were having historic classes. I mean, like maybe 20 people, not the whole the shipyard. And also then other people from Warsaw, writers, artists came to the shipyard also to support workers, researchers, academics. So yeah, thousands of people were in the shipyard. The weather was great then, so it was also important that it was not December, so it was August, so it was possible for people to stay in the shipyards and to sleep there, and to occupy it for more than 2 weeks.
Thank you. Thank you again, Anna. We're unfortunately out of time, but it's a really fascinating story. And yeah, we would be very grateful if you could share the links. I'm sure a lot of us can speak Polish or know people who speak Polish who can help. And yeah, maybe we all thank Anna once again, and please don't forget to go to Susie Wurmbrand's lecture that starts in 10 minutes. Yeah, have a nice evening, everybody.
Have a nice evening. Thank you very much again. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kati.
Thank you,
Bye.
Kathy. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.